The galaxy was silent, unnaturally so. 2 years had passed since Captain Elias Grant had unleashed the Excalibur warhead deep within the Erebus hive mind. 2 years since the unstoppable swarm had collapsed in an instant, their monstrous bodies vanishing into dust. 2 years since the final remnants of the Alliance had wandered through the aftermath of a victory that cost them everything. And yet the quiet didn't feel right. High Captain Zorth stood on the command deck of the Sovereign Wrath, staring into the vast stretch of deep space. The final battle had unfolded in a region far beyond the known galaxy, where the Erebus had consolidated their strength, a place where reality itself had begun to twist. Now only a lifeless void remained, a dead zone, an abyss where the laws of physics still bent unnaturally. The war was over. So why did it feel like something was still watching? Zorth turned toward his second-in-command. Warlord Threx stood, motionless beside him, his scarred, scaled flesh bearing the memory of horrors they had barely outlived. "What is it?" Zorth asked. Threx paused. "Sensors are picking up something anomalous. At the edge of the dead zone. It's strange." Zorth's spines bristled. "Define strange." Threx tapped a command into the console. A holographic display lit up before them. "We sent long-range probes into the Excalibur detonation zone last month. None returned. But today, one came. Back." Zorth frowned as Threx magnified the probe's final broadcast. Static, flickering, chaotic sensor data. Then something, just for a moment. A ripple, a flicker of unidentified energy. Then the feed vanished. No detonation, no interference. The probe simply disappeared. Zorth's jaw tightened. "Play it again," Threx complied, but the footage remained unchanged. A brief, unexplainable disturbance, something shifting in the dark. It couldn't be. The Erebus were dead. Their source had been obliterated, hadn't it? Zorth exhaled and turned away. "Any other reports like this?" Threx's pause was telling. "Yes." Zorth's claws curled. "How many?" "Dozens. All from the outermost sectors. Ships lost, sensor anomalies, and whispers." Zorth's blood chilled. "Whispers," Threx nodded grimly. "Voices, patterns that don't match any known dialect, but some..." He hesitated. "Some sound human." Zorth turned fully toward him, a weight settling in his gut. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Threx's tone darkened. "We once believed the Erebus were impossible too." A long silence passed. Zorth turned back to the black, broken view beyond. He had fought the Erebus. He had witnessed their terror and their end. But now something else was stirring, something lurking in the void. And it was calling them back. The war was supposed to be over. Earth had burned to stop the Erebus. The remnants of the Galactic Alliance had scattered to the edge of existence, fractured but surviving. The Excalibur warhead had done what no other weapon could. It had annihilated the enemy entirely, and yet something remained, something wrong. High Captain Zorth paced across the bridge of the Sovereign Wrath, his claws clicking against cold alloy. Threx's report echoed in his mind. Whispers in silent channels, ships disappearing, and anomalies where nothing should exist. It didn't make sense. The Erebus were dead. They had to be. "High Captain!" A voice shouted from the sensor pit. Zorth spun around, alert. "Report." The technician's fingers moved rapidly across the console. "We've received another transmission. It's weak, but it's coming from inside the dead zone." Zorth strode to the display, eyes narrowing. The signal was corrupted, indecipherable. But as the technician filtered the static, something began to take shape, something undeniable. A voice, fragile, broken. "Help!" Zorth's breath caught. The bridge went silent. Threx's expression darkened. "Run a full analysis," Zorth ordered. "If this is some relic from the war, I want to know." The technician worked swiftly. The voice became clearer. Zorth's gut twisted. "This is Captain Elias Grant. I repeat, I am still here." The silence on the bridge became suffocating. Zorth's claws clenched into a fist, his voice barely audible. "That's not possible. It had to be a lie." Later, in the war room, Zorth sat with his senior officers. They watched the recovered signal shimmer in the air between them. He remembered hearing Grant's final words before the Excalibur detonated. He remembered the indomitable sensors capturing the explosion that devoured everything. Captain Elias Grant had died. And yet, could it be mimicry? Zorth asked. Commander Sato, a veteran human officer with a hard-lined face, shook his head. "I fought the Erebus for over a decade. They didn't lie. They consumed bodies, ships, worlds, but they didn't impersonate." "Then what is it?" Threx asked, arms folded. Sato hesitated. "I ran the voice print against all databanks. It's an exact match." He leaned forward, eyes hard. "Exact. No deviations. No errors." Zorth's spines rose. "That's impossible. The Excalibur didn't kill him. It erased him. That entire sector was gone." Sato met his gaze. "And yet, the transmission originates from there." Cold silence settled over them. Zorth ground his teeth. He didn't believe in phantoms, but the Erebus had taught him that the universe held nightmares beyond comprehension. If this was a trap, they had to spring it, and if, by some unfathomable truth, Elias Grant was alive, then they had left something unfinished in the dark. Zorth took a breath and made his decision. "We're going back." The sovereign wrath slid through the void like a ghost, its scarred hull gliding past the wreckage of the old Erebus front. It wasn't alone. A small strike fleet moved with it, 30 warships strong. The last remnants of the once mighty Galactic Alliance, human destroyers, Royan dreadnoughts, Tar recon vessels, and a handful of independent craft, had survived the war by sheer chance. All of them had witnessed the horrors firsthand, and now they had returned to the place where everything had ended. High Captain Zorth stood on the bridge, staring at the view screen. They were approaching the coordinates of the signal, the Excalibur detonation zone, or what was left of it. The void was wrong. Even through reinforced viewports, space itself looked fractured. The region where the weapon had detonated didn't resemble a normal battlefield. It was emptier than it should have been, as though something had devoured the very fabric of reality. "Hi, Captain," Threx said from his station. "We're crossing the threshold." Zorth exhaled slowly. "Status?" Threx's claws moved over the console. "Sensors are unreliable. Some readings show total emptiness, others show..." He hesitated. "I don't know, sir. Like space is shifting around us." Zorth frowned. "What about the signal, Sato?" The human commander checked his instruments. "Still there, unchanged. Whoever or whatever is broadcasting. They're waiting." Zorth turned to his crew. "Send a probe ahead. I want full scans before we take another step forward." A small drone detached from the fleet, its thrusters igniting as it streaked into the anomaly. The bridge crew watched. Its data feed stream in. For a moment everything seemed fine. Then the screen flickered. The data corrupted. The probe signal twisted into unreadable gibberish, until it was replaced by something else. A voice, a whisper, laced with static and distortion. "I told you. I'm still here." Zorth felt his blood run cold. It was Elias Grant, and he was waiting for them in the dark. The bridge of the Sovereign. Wrath went silent. The probe's feed had cut out completely, leaving nothing but static, yet the voice lingered across the comms, crackling with eerie calm. It was unmistakably Elias Grant, controlled, measured, the same voice he'd used in every battle before Earth fell. But that was impossible. Grant was dead. Zorth's claws clenched behind his back. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, something beyond comprehension. And yet, if there was even a chance Grant was alive, they had to know. Threx, Zorth said, forcing his voice steady. Can you pinpoint the source? Threx shook his head. Not exactly. The signal is shifting, bleeding through different points in space, but it's strongest at the core of the detonation zone. Of course it was. Zorth turned to Sato. You knew Grant better than any of us. What do you think? The human commander hesitated. I don't know. He rubbed his face, like trying to shake off a weight. If it were anyone else, I'd say it was Erebus mimicry. But the Erebus never talked like this. And this feels like him. Zorth didn't like that answer. He turned back to the screen. The abyss stretched before them, silent, endless. The detonation zone was no ordinary battlefield. It was an open wound in space, its laws scarred by the Excalibur warhead. No ship had ever returned from within, and yet something was there. Zorth exhaled sharply. We're going in. The fleet advanced cautiously into the dead zone. Every ship had shields at maximum, weapons primed, but there was nothing to fight. No enemies, no wreckage, just emptiness, and then a shape emerged in the distance. At first, it was hard to perceive. The void rippled, warped around something almost tangible. The closer they came, the more it solidified. Finally, the scanners locked on. Sato sucked in a sharp breath. That's a ship. Zorth narrowed his eyes. Not just a ship. The Indomitable. The massive human warship drifted silently in the abyss. Its black armor was intact. No visible damage. No signs of decay. As if it had been frozen in time, and yet it wasn't right. Even looking at it made Zorth's scales itch. His brain struggled to process its existence. This can't be real, Threx muttered. Zorth didn't disagree. The Indomitable had been at ground zero when Grant detonated the Excalibur. It shouldn't exist. It should have been obliterated, like everything else, and yet here it was, waiting. The comms crackled again. I told you, I'm still here. Zorth exhaled. Prepare a boarding team. The boarding shuttle drifted toward the Indomitable, its thrusters firing minimally as it navigated the dead zone's unnatural stillness. High Captain Zorth sat strapped into his harness, his claws tapping against his knee. The air was thick with unspoken fear. The Indomitable was not just a warship, it was a legend, the last guardian of Earth, the vessel that had led the charge against the Erebus and delivered the final blow. It was also supposed to be gone, and yet it drifted before them, untouched by time. Zorth glanced at the human seated across from him. Commander Sato. The man hadn't spoken since they left the Sovereign Wrath. His eyes were locked on the viewport, staring at the hulking warship, as if trying to convince himself it was real. You all right? Zorth asked. Sato didn't look away. I served on that ship once, he said quietly. 5 years, before Grant took command. Zorth tilted his head. You knew him well. Sato exhaled. Well enough to know, if he is in there, it's not him anymore. The words hung heavy in the cabin. Zorth turned forward. The Indomitable loomed in the viewport. Its docking bay was already open, as if inviting them in. Something was waiting. The shuttle shuddered as it made contact with the docking clamps. A loud clank echoed through the hull, followed by a mechanical hiss as the pressurization equalized. Then, silence. Zorth unstrapped himself and stood as the boarding team prepped their weapons. 8 soldiers, 4 human, 4 Royan, armed with plasma rifles and electromagnetic disruptors in case the Erebus had left traps behind. Final check, Zorth said. No open comms unless necessary. No splitting up. If something moves, you shoot. Acknowledgements followed. Zorth exhaled and hit the airlock release. The doors slid open with a slow, agonizing hiss. Beyond them, the Indomitable waited. Dark. Silent. Watching. The first step inside felt wrong. The boarding team's boots clanked against the metal floor, but the sound was muffled like the ship was swallowing it. Lights flickered in erratic pulses. Shadows stretched and twisted in unnatural ways. The air was thick, not physically, but in some unseen, unshakable way, like something was pressing against them. Sato took the lead, rifle raised. Powers, still on. Life support's running. Zorth nodded, gripping his weapon tighter. Then where's the crew? No one answered. They moved cautiously through the corridors, clearing every corner, but the ship remained empty. No bodies, no blood. No signs of struggle, just absence, as if the crew had simply vanished. Then the whispering started. At first it was barely audible, a faint hum like static in the comms, but the deeper they pressed, the louder it grew. Still here? Zorth froze. Did anyone else hear that? The team exchanged uneasy looks. Then a human soldier muttered, "Yeah, we all did." Sato's jaw clenched. "It's Grant, same as before." Zorth's spines bristled. "No, that's not Grant. That's something wearing his voice." The whispering continued, broken, fragmented. "Don't leave me. The void is endless. I see you then?" The lights shut off. Total darkness. A click echoed as someone switched on their helmet lamp. The beam cut through the void, but the shadows seemed to cling to the walls, resisting the light. A deep, metallic groan rumbled through the ship. And then something moved, not in the open, not in their path, but in the walls. A slow, shifting rippleran along the bulkheads like muscle tensing beneath skin. The metal itself seemed to breathe. Sat's voice was tight. "That's not the ship." Zor's claws tightened. "Around his rifle number it's not." And then, in the pitch-black silence, a voice rang out clear, "Director, you shouldn't have come back." It was Elias Grant, and he was right behind them. Zorth spun rifle, raised his claws, tightening. Against the trigger, the boarding team followed suit, sweeping their weapons towards the source of the voice. The corridor behind them was empty. Nothing. No movement, no life signs, just the faint hum of the indomitable systems still running in the darkness. But they had all heard. It Elias Grant's voice. The air felt wrong, heavy, as if something unseen was pressing down on them, wrapping invisible eyeball hands around their throats. Zorth exhaled slowly. Thermal scans. A Royan soldier checked his visor. Negative, nothing. Visible, that didn't make sense. Zorth had fought in dozens of wars. He knew the feeling of an enemy watching from the shadows, but this wasn't something lurking in the dark. The darkness itself felt alive. Sato gritted his teeth. "We keep moving main bridges. 3 decks up. If we can access the logs, we might find out what the hell happened here." Zorth nodded, motioning for the team to advance. They moved carefully, stepping over rusted grates and past dead terminals. The Indomitable should have been a corpse, of a ship lifeless and abandoned, but its power still thrummed beneath their feet. It was awake, and something was awake with it. They reached the first junction, when the whispering started again. This time it wasn't a voice in the comms. It was all around. Them too late, turn back. I see you. A flicker of movement to the right. Zorth snapped his rifle towards the motion. But the corridor was empty. His heartbeat pounded in his ears. He didn't imagine that Sato, he whispered. "Did you see a thud?" echoed through. The hallway loud directly ahead. The team froze, weapons up. Zor's pulse hammered as the thewing came. Again a slow, deliberate impact against the bulkhead. Then a single bloody handprint smeared across the metal, appearing as if from nowhere. And in the dim emergency light, something stepped into view. The team's breath hitched. It was Elias Grant, or at least something that looked like him. Zorth had seen Elias Grant before he had fought. Beside him knew the hard-set jaw, the sharp blue eyes, the unshakable posture of a man who'd led his species through its darkest hour. But this wasn't Grant. It wore his face, but something was wrong too, still too perfect, like a wax figure carved to look like a man. The Elias Grant thing stared at them, unblinking. Its uniform was pristine, untouched by battle. Not a single scar, not a hint of fatigue, just empty. Zorth muttered, "Are you seeing this?" Satike's voice was horror. "Yeah." Zorth took a slow step. Forward, his claws tightened around his rifle. Grant, the thing's head tilted a mechanical slowness, like it didn't quite understand the question. Then in that same perfect voice, "You shouldn't have come back." Zor's spines bristled. "You're not him." The thing smiled. Not a human smile, too wide, too deliberate. "Aren't I?" The lights flickered, and Elias Grant vanished the moment he disappeared. The entire ship shuddered. The bulkheads groaned like living metal, twisting under pressure. The whispering turned into a roar. 1,000 voices screaming at once, and then the shadows moved. Zorth barely had time to react before something lunged from the darkness. It wasn't Grant. It wasn't anything. A shape, black, formless, shifting, poured from the walls, taking shape as it moved, not a body, but an imitation of one. It moved like a human, but it wasn't human. Its limbs stretched too long, bending at unnatural angles. It's as if they were eyes glowed with a faint, sickly green light, and it was fast. Zorth barely ducked as it lunged, the thing's arms stretched like liquid metal razor, sharp claws missing his face by inches. Fire. The team opened up plasma rounds, ripping through the corridor. The thing jerked its body, distorting as if struggling to hold its shape for a brief moment. It flickered, its form glitching. Shifting 1 second, it was a featureless nightmare. The next, it looked like one of their own soldiers, a human marine, his face twisted in agony, his body half consumed by shifting shadows. He screamed. Zorth pulled the trigger. A plasma round burned straight through its chest. The thing convulsed, its stolen features melting away, replaced by writhing black tendrils. Then, with an unnatural shriek, it collapsed into the floor, dissolving into nothingness. Silence. Zor's breath was ragged. His claws trembled around. His rifle, the air smelled wrong, like burning metal and something rotting. Sato swallowed hard. What the hell was that? Zorth forced himself to stand, forced himself to think. It had looked human for a moment. It had even sounded human, and it had worn a face just like the Elias Grant thing. Zorth exhaled, steadying his pulse. "We need to get to the bridge." Sato wiped sweat from his brow. "You think Thelogs will tell us what happened?" Zorth looked down at the blackened remains of the thing that had tried to kill them. "No," he muttered. "I think they'll tell what's still happening," and that terrified him more than anything. The air inside the Indomitable was thick, heavy. Every breath felt wrong, as if they were inhaling something that wasn't meant to exist. Zor led the team deeper into the warship, plasma rifle steady in his grip. Every hallway felt twisted, not physically, but in a way that gnawed at the mind. It was subtle, like stepping into a room and forgetting why you had come in, like walking through a dream that was becoming a nightmare. They had lost 2 more soldiers along the way. One moment they were marching in formation, the next gone. No screams, no gunfire, just erased. Sato had stopped calling their names after the second one. The remaining 6 moved cautiously, barely breathing. The ship's bridge was close. Zorth could see the reinforced door at the end of the corridor, its metal frame warped from battle. If there were any answers left, they would be inside. The whispering had not stopped. "So close, we see you. You were never meant to return." Zorth ignored it. He had no choice. They reached the bridge doors. The access panel was dead, but Sato stepped forward, pulling an emergency override from his pack. He worked quickly, his fingers moving with precision. But Zorth could tell he was rattled. They all were. The shadows had tried to wear Elias Grant's face, tried to pretend, but the real question wasn't why. The real question was, had they succeeded? Sato exhaled sharply. "We're in the bridge doors," groaned open, and they stepped inside the bridge of the IND. Itabel was frozen in time. Every console was still active, their screens flickering with static-laced data. The captain's chair remained in place, perfectly aligned with the main viewport, which displayed the endless blackness beyond, and in the center of the bridge, slumped over the terminal, a body. The team raised their weapons instantly. It wasn't just anybody. It was Elias Grant, or what was left of him. Zorth moved closer, his claws tightening around his rifle. Grant's uniform was torn, withered with Age, but that wasn't possible. The Indomitable had vanished 2 years ago. His skin was grey, cracked like ancient stone, as if his body had been half preserved, caught between death and something else. And then, in the flickering glow of the consoles, he opened his eyes. Zorth didn't think he fired a plasma bolt ripped straight through the captain's skull, blowing apart bone and synthetic flesh. Grant's body lurched, convulsing violently, before collapsing onto the terminal. Silence. Threx exhaled sharply. That wasn't him. Sack voice was tight. It wasn't him anymore. Zorth swallowed hard. He had seen what the Erebus could do. They consumed, assimilated, wore the flesh of the fallen. This thing had not been Grant. It had been something trapped in his remains. Zorth forced himself to look away, pull the ship's logs. Now Sato nodded, moving toward the terminal. The system resisted at first, its interface lagging, glitching, but finally a single log remained intact. The last recorded message from Captain Elias Grant. S activated it, and Grant's real voice filled the bridge log entry. Zoju, Sane 7. Captain Elias Grant, date unknown. If you're hearing this, it means someone found us a ragged breath, static interference. I don't know how much time I have left. Time doesn't work. The same way here, we shouldn't be here. None of this should exist. More interference. The sound of metal groaning in the background. When the Excalibur War had detonated, we didn't die. We didn't win. We broke something. We tore a hole in the universe, and now we're caught between what was and what comes next. A pause. I don't know if I'm still alive. I don't know if I'm already dead. The whispering in the ship grew louder. Zorth clenched his jaw. Grant's voice continued weaker. Now it's not just the Erebus. They were just the beginning, just a symptom of something much worse. A long, painful silence. And then, if you found this log, you need Torren, because if you can hear me, they can hear you too. The log ended, and the whispering stopped. The silence that followed was worse than any sound. Sato stepped back from the terminal, his face pale. What the hell does that mean? Zorth didn't answer. His mind was racing. The Erebus had never been the real enemy. Something else had been waiting behind them, and when the Excalibur warhead detonated, they had let it through. A sharp metallic click echoed through the bridge. Zorth turned, and Elias Grant was standing in the doorway, perfect and touched. His blue eyes locked onto them, and he smiled. I told you I'm still here. It told you I'm still here. The thing wearing Elias Grant's face stood in the doorway, motionless. Its expression was too perfect, too practiced, as if it was mimicking a smile rather than feeling it. Zor's grip tightened on his rifle. The real Elias Grant was dead. They had just seen his decayed corpse slumped over the bridge console, so whatever was standing in front of them, it wasn't him. Threx snarled, raising his weapon. Burn it. They opened fire. Plasma rounds tore through the figures, chest melting synthetic flesh and scorching the walls behind it. The force should have sent a normal body crumpling to the ground, but Grant didn't fall, didn't flinch, didn't even react. Instead, he kept smiling, and then he took a step forward. Satki breath hitched. No number. No. The thing's face split apart. Not with blood. Not with bone, with shadows. The skin peeled back like unraveling fabric, revealing something underneath, something shifting its form, flickering between 100 faces, 100 different versions of Elias Grant, overlapping and collapsing in on themselves. Not real Nota body, a thought-given shape, and it wasn't alone. The whispering returned, but not just from Grant, from everywhere. Run, let us in. You opened the door, the walls moved, the bulkheads of the Indomitable. The very metal of the ship shifted like liquid, forming half-shaped hands, twisting faces, mouths, whispering in endless, distorted voices. They had never been alone. And then the lights died, completely fall back to the shuttle. Now the team sprinted down the corridor, weapons firing wildly. Into the darkness, the grand thing didn't chase them. It watched its form warped, flickering in and out of existence like a mirage. They had never been meant to return here. The Indomitable wasn't a ship anymore. It was a scar in reality, where something else had slipped through and it wanted them to stay. Sato shouted through the Cal Sovereign in wrath. "Do you read? We need immediate extraction, now static." No response, no connection. To the fleet, Zor's pulse hammered. The ship was trying to sever them from reality, to trap them here. "Keep moving," he barked. They reached the hangar bay, the shuttle still intact. Threx practically threw himself into the pilot seat, slamming the thrusters online. "Get in, get in." Zorth took one last look toward the corridor. Grant was still there, standing at the threshold, watching the ship shook violently, its structure warping the walls, breathing, and for the first time Grant's smile faded. "It's awake. Now you let it back to them." Zor's blood turned to ice. He lunged in tow. The shot slamming the hatch shut, the shuttle engines roared, the thrusters igniting as they launched from the Indomitable, hurtling toward open space behind them. The ship rippled, its form collapsing inward, distorting like a mirage. And then it was gone, not destroyed, not left in ruins, just erased like it had never been there at all. The moment they crossed back into normal space, the sovereign wrath reappeared, ed on their senses. The comms crackled. "Hi, Captain. What happened? You vanished from all systems. 1 second you were there, and then nothing." Zorth didn't respond immediately. He turned to Sato. The human hands were trembling, his face pale. "You saw it too?" Zorth said quietly. Sato nodded. Grant was never there. Sato exhaled shakily. "Number." He wasn't. Whatever they had seen, whatever had worn his voice, it had never been Elias Grant. It had been something else, something waiting, something patient. Zorth took a slow, steady breath. "Get us back to the fleet." Now they had opened a door, and something had stepped through. The war was never about the Erebus. They were just the first infection. The real war, the real enemy. It had been watching the whole time, and now it knew they had seen it too.